This is Nicholas Alexiou, Department of Sociology and the Hellenic American Project, Queen's College CUNY. And today in our series of oral histories interviews, we are very honored, pleased and enthusiastic to have an oral history interview with a very famous person and a real hardcore researcher, Mr. MELETIOS POULIOPOULOS, here in New Hampshire. Friday, August 23rd, 2025, a person who is a historian, an archivist, a founder of the Greek Cultural Resources, and deals with all things that are related to the Greek American community since the beginning of immigration until now. Mr. Pouliopoulos, Agapite Meleti, thank you very much for your consent to participate to the oral history interviews of the Hellenic American Project, Queen's College CUNY.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.
And let's start with the biographical questions. You state your full name and where you were born and grew up.
My name is MELETIOS POULIOPOULOS, and I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, in the United States. My parents were George and Fula. Fula was from a farm family in Dover, New Hampshire. My father George was from the big city in New Hampshire, Manchester, and they were married in 1953 in Dover.
So both your parents were born here?
Both my parents were born here. My grandparents, all four grandparents, came from Greece, and they were early immigrants. And it's important because, you know, the immigration waves, they came through. My grandparents were part of the very first big immigration wave. So Papu Meleti would go back to 1907, 1908, 1909. They all came through those years.
From the Peloponnese area?
Well, Papu Meleti was from Thiva, and everyone else was from the Choria Exoptikalamata. So the Avolitsi, Ariochori, or Papu, so my mother. Oh, here we go. Can I do the pictures now? Okay. All right. Let me start with Papu. Let me start with my parents, because I do have these photos.
So
we have not only photos, by the way, we have recordings of them, and I want to talk to you about that. But this is my parents. They were born in 1953. My father George, and my mother Fula. And it's funny, Fula, Tino Mafto, so her name was Chrysavyi. And it went from Chrysavyi to Chrysavula, then Vula, then Fula. And then I said, Ma, you know, there's a political party in Greece right now. You don't want to be saying it. But she would go in church and she would say, Chrysavyi. You know. Yeah. So anyway.
Beautiful people.
Yeah. Thank you.
So basically you're a third generation Greek American.
Well, it depends on how you count, Nico.
Sociologically speaking, yeah.
Sociologically speaking. My grandparents both were, I believe they were naturalized. I haven't seen their certificates. They were They were here in America, but they gave birth. The first generation that the way we used to count was my parents, George and Fula, were for the first generation. I don't know if that's true. Your told me it depends. If your parents claim their citizenship in America.
Well, regardless of all these bureaucratic things, your family has a history of more than 100 years.
Correct. Papu Meleti
in America.
This is Papu Meleti and Yaya Christitsa.
Look at this. Don't you like the way they used to dress?
They used to. Everyone was dressed up, Nico. I grew up in this era when all the older men had caps and coats. When I went to church or I went to school, it was very formal.
Do you know anything about the family business?
Yes, I know all about my family. What happened? My grandparents were farmers on my mother's side, and then my father, Papu Nyonyo, and Yaya Stavrula had a farm, and they had tomatoes, and they also had some livestock and things. A big farm in Dover, and then they had a store, a little corner store in the 1950s. But basically, they were farmers.
Which is very unusual for that generation. Usually, the railroads,
correct,
factories,
right,
slaughterhouses.
A lot of Greeks were in factories. Yeah, slaughterhouses. But the farmers
were... But not farmers. It was other ethnic groups, like the Polish or the Japanese, for example.
It's funny, my story the family stories that we tell that are passed down, right? My mother says to me that her father, Papu Nyonyo, couldn't speak any English when he came. And he went to one of the rich men who had a land grant from the King of England. And he had all of this land in Dover, and he said, I would like the land over there. And I want to build a house, and I want to start a family. And he said in his broken Greek. They communicated. When someone came to the door, they had servants at the door that answered, and he was in this estate, he was in the big house, and he had to ask if he could build on the land. And this man was so nice and saw his spirit and said that he didn't have to start paying until the house was finished.
Oh, wow.
And so they did that, and then they farmed the land, and they had a couple of farms there. And my father, the other side of the family, George's side, Papu Meleti, worked in first in a shoe business.
That was also a venue.
They had that going on, and he had traveled around, and Maria Christica came over. All of them were married in America. Yeah. So that's how it happened, and here I am.
Excellent. Yeah. And growing up, it was a Greek home, Greek at home, English outside home in school.
There was a lot of Greek in the house because we had house parties. The social situations were different. Everything was centered around the church. So as soon as we could walk, well, I would say maybe by 5, 6 years old, our parents took us to church. And in America, the church played a very important role, as you know, in immigrant life. And for us, it helped to center us a little bit. But we also had parties, and my Yaya Christica, Yaya Christica used to take care of us. My parents both worked, and she said to my parents, I'm going to teach them Greek, only Greek in the house. And we lived in the country, like what you see here, a little bit. There are farms all around us. Yeah. In those years, now it's a city, but back then there were farms.
So when they came here, they became American citizens, etc., they had a chance to travel to Greece? Or you, as a child, you traveled to Greece?
We didn't have the money, Nico. My parents are barely middle class. We worked very, very hard. And I started working when I was 12 years old. My parents came to me and said that my uncle and aunt who lived next door, they had a restaurant. They thought that maybe this was the time for me to come and work. And what did I think about it? And I said, yes. So I went and worked, and I've been working ever since. And at 12 years old, what was nice, through high school, I had money in my pocket. But I also gave money back to the family, and I did what I could. We had our own gardens and farms there that we would farm.
And you have a sister?
Yeah, I have older sisters. I'm the baby. And but my parents were they were very much in love, and we had a lot of Greek tradition in the home. So we had parties, and there were relatives there that only spoke Greek. And that was a part of our social existence. And we went, certain holidays, we knew we were going to go to my Aunt Nikki's house or my Aunt Tony's house.
Do you know how the grandfathers came to America?
Yes, boat? I do. I know that my grandmother, Christica, my father's mother, was a stowaway on a boat, basically, that she traveled under a fictitious name. And we know who she came and who received her, and who she was almost set up as a servant within their home, which is a little strange because by the time I came around, many, many years later, we called Aunt Connie, and my parents considered them my Aunt Connie and Uncle John. They were very old. She was one of the first teachers, first ones to get, Greek women, to get a degree in New Hampshire and teach in Manchester in the 20s. So by the time I knew her in the 60s, she was old, elderly, still teaching at the time. Anyway, my grandmother, my father's mother, came and under fictitious circumstances, very young, I would say maybe 10 to 12 years old, and worked in this person's home as a servant. And then my Papu Meleti, of course, came over, but then he went back for the Balkan Wars. The Greeks that came early felt a very strong allegiance to Greece. They wanted to be Americans and participate in society here, and we are still allowed that dual citizenship. We can have the apatrides, but for my grandparents in those years, they need to do that balance. But it was important to them to continue the Greek traditions. So we told stories. As a family, we spent time around the table, things you don't see right now. And you go into a Greek home, and everyone's in a different room listening to something else, reading something else, doing something else. We spent hours around the table. And while the kids were playing in the neighborhood, and I was out working in the garden with my mother, weeding and talking with her.
How they receive news from Greece?
The news from Greece came through the radio, and it came from the newspapers. We didn't subscribe to any Greek newspapers in the home because we had the Greek American newspaper, which was published in English, the Hellenic Chronicle, when I was growing up. And that was a national newspaper that had correspondence across the country. And they also, the publisher, Peter Agris, it published from 1950 to 2000. But Peter was amazingly tied with the Greek community, so they had a lot of organizational history, a lot of religious history in this paper. So we got our news that way of the community, but also from listening to the radio. We used to listen to the radio. There was one radio in the house, and everyone listened to it. And the Greek
programs, right?
Yeah. And they would give us the NEA. They would tell us what's happening, and both here in Greek, and of the things that were of interest to Greek Americans, and the organizational history, and the news from Greece. And then our organizations help to communicate the needs, which is, there's just been an earthquake. We need to do a fundraiser. We are trying to build a library. We're trying to build a theological school in Brookline, Massachusetts, to teach priests. We need books. We need this. And we were getting calls for funding or materials or participation. All of this had happened on a national scale. We had national organizations in place, and that community was so strong. And there were these elders that...
And philanthropy is a major characteristic, not only for Americans in general, but also for Greek Americans, right?
Perfect, yeah, and it continues through Greece. Look at how Greece is receiving all of the immigrants, and how the doors have always been open. Our doors are open.
Because they have memories of their own...
Right, their own struggles. But the Greeks have to remember that. They have to remember the values, and I always talk about recalibration, because I think you can get here and live fat off the calf. But in the end, you have to remember your roots and what the really values are, that you know that we have these things going on. Our parents instilled that into us. You used to say, I had Greek classes, and we used to say, people would ask me, how would you grow up? I said, megalosa kanonika. So I grew up in the canons of the church, but also with a sense of community and family, and it was very strong. I'm rare to find that here. I still find it in Greece. I go to the villages. I find that. I connect with that. I show them what I have learned. I talk to them about things that they don't remember. Anyway, I'm jumping.
No, it's fantastic. But tell us about going to high school, where a lot of non-Greeks, right?
Yeah, when I went
to... So how they...
well, I have to tell you...
Your relationship with the non-Greeks.
Signomi pusa sonoxa Nico, but yeah, I know you want to know the level.
It's perfectly right.
Is it okay?
It's a fine...
I'm sorry.
We were friends for many years.
Yeah, for many years, and I appreciate this opportunity. When I went to school as a young person, first of all, let me tell you, and I think this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, that my name in school was Michael. And what happened is, a lot of Greek kids had this happen too. In the house, I was Meleti. At church, I was Meleti. Meletios, Meleti, they called me. Okay. And my first day of school, in public school, my sister brings me, and we're standing in front of this woman at a little school, a thranio, a little thing that opened up. I remember it really clearly. And she says, "Okay, Michael." And I was just standing there. And my sister, she goes, "Michael," and she pushed my shoulder. She goes, "That's your name now." My older sister. And I said, "Michael Dinafta." I never heard it. I never heard of Michael. And they're going to call me that. So I had this identity crisis. because Michael, and I had to get used to it. And then I go home, Meleti. And then finally, I went through high school like that. I went through high school as Michael. And when I got into high school, there were so many Greeks and children in my generation, they call it in America the baby boom generation after World War II, and that the Greeks fought for a course on Greek language. At the time they were teaching Latin. I learned Latin. I took Latin. They had other languages, French and Spanish, but for the Greek kids, they had Greek. Anyone that wanted to take it, but all the Greek kids were in there. And we learned Katharevousa. We learned the Polytoniko Systema. We learned those old ways, right? And the dative case and things that are now missing that help so much in my studies, the work I do now. And with the Greek kids, we were fine, but we were a little different, weren't we? So I was picked on. I was a kid. Sometimes they overheard a name. Sometimes they heard what I was eating or what I looked like. I was a little darker than that. Because and they're here in this part of the country, there weren't a lot of dark people around. And, but yet the church provided a sanctuary for us. It provided us a place. I grew up very naive. I think there were a lot more people that were informed about things that I'd never learned about.
Which church was that? What's the name?
I learned at St. George, Greek Orthodox in Manchester, became a cathedral in 1970. I was baptized in the old church in Pine Street. And at the time my parents took us, for me, I was about 6 or 7 years old, and we had Sunday school, we had religious education. I tried to play basketball, I tried my hands at sports. In the end, I wasn't a good sports person, but I was a good academic. So when anytime there was a spelling bee or this or that, they called me for that. But at home when we got back, I realized we'd have these parties. There was always music going. There was always a radio. There was all this enforcement of our culture. There was a context to the culture. Because whether or not I realized it, I was sitting there listening to or talking with an uncle that just came from Greece. He worked for 10 years and he's going back. Other people that had come, they've been here longer. And I was the kid that always recorded those conversations. I was the one who was the budding historian, the one that was interested in to say, how did you get here? The questions you asked of me, you're asking of me, I asked of my elders. And other kids weren't doing that. That's the curiosity that I always look to find in people.
So it was a very Greek environment, right?
Very.
When the first time you visited Greece?
Not until 1988. It was right after the 1987 was the big earthquake in Kalamata. And what happened was, with me growing up, like I say, we didn't have a lot of money. I ended up going into a corporate job, and I started work in Boston, working for a corporation, a phone company. And I put on in my goals that I wanted to be in Greece, and I wanted to work in Greece and live in Greece. And that opportunity came, but in 1988 is when I first went. And I went back to Thiva, where my Papu Meleti was from. Did I make it to I did make it to the Avolisi. I met with my uncle, my father's cousin, who was alive. I call him uncle in that world. We do that. And I felt a real connection. I brought back with me, by the way, recordings of songs that were my grandparents had sung that I'm still looking for, that have been lost in Greece.
But I want you to describe some of the feelings going to Greece, because now you are a young adult, you are a professional. Having all this knowledge about Greece from books, from radio, from newspapers, but now you are in the physical.
I'm in there, right?
You are there in the topography of the space.
My language, my Greek language skills were top notch, and I can show you some journals I was writing at the time, handwritten journals that were really. I was a scholar. I had studied ancient Greek. I studied biblical Greek. Excuse me. I studied biblical Greek. I was already on my road in scholarship, but also in cultural. I was really set in the culture. I knew a lot about the cultural stuff. So when I showed up in Greece, people thought They're looking at me like, "Are you Italian? Look at the way." And they used to laugh at me the way I would speak, because the younger kids my age would say, "You're talking like my papu," and I said, "Well, that's because our language had frozen in the 1960s, and now it was 1988, and now it was how many years had gone by, right?" But I was using expressions that were, some of them were foreign expressions that had become adapted. Here, the Greeks had to adapt, right?
Of course.
So this adapted music that we have, these adapted expressions and things like that. But so, you know, when I learned in school teleorasi, we didn't have that word in the house. We had the television. And, you know, and logariasmo then ipirketote, it was Tobili, you know, and Togazi, and there were all these like expressions. And when I went to Greece, they were like, and, but yet they knew that I was speaking an older type Greek, and I connected with the land in a context that had been missing from my life. In a way, it completed a lot of my my explorations. I had a friend that said this to me: "You're listening to Kleftika. You'll never really understand it until you go further down this path." And you're listening to these things and these songs, you know, Sotira Bello singing, you know, Taspite Itan Hamila, you know, and you look at, and you say, but you have to see it, you have to be in it, you have to talk to the people that have worked the earth and what that brings forward and all of it. It was overwhelming for me.
So that contributed more to the Greek identity. It reinforced it somehow.
It reinforced it so much.
So if someone asks you now, since the family has more than 100 years continuous presence in America, how you identify yourself? As a Greek American?
Completely Greek American.
An American?
Not American Greek. I think American Greek is a surrender by people who feel they've been assimilated. And oh yes, I know a little Greek. I'm very proud of our heritage. I think it contributed a lot to my work ethic, to my general sense of ethics and how I treat people, and my what's right and what's wrong. I think the church, and a lot of people will say, well, I'm not really churchy. That's not for me. I think it helps to civilize us. It helps to give us a foundation. It helped for me to give me a, beyond the spirituality and Jesus and this and that, it was a nice way of treating people. It was a nice way, the basic rules of Christianity.
The interactions.
The social interactions were beautiful. I had beautiful people around me. I'm so indebted to my church for how that I was brought up, along with my family, along with what they taught me, along with my work ethic and my life ethic there. And that's why I love my sisters, because we grew up in the same family. But we have the same way that we treat people today. And not everyone's like that, are they? And that was the thing that was difficult for me as a kid. There were other people in the world, there are other people that didn't have such good families. Even though we were poor, we had good values. Those values erode. They even erode within the Greek community.
So you see, because now you came back to the community, you live close to the community, and do you see some of the difference that you're referring to from the years or the period you grew up? And now it is also Greeks, because they have achieved some kind of upward socioeconomic mobility. They moved out from the ethnic niche, for example, right? So they went to what they call suburbia now. So they live far away from the church now.
Right. They live far away from the church, but also not from the physical church, but also from the spiritual church.
Okay.
They live far away from. There's an old expression: "Don't forget where you came from."
Yes.
And the reason we say that is that. The question always comes up: why do people? I think there are people who are caught up in materialism and position and money, and I have more than this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Oh, you two went there. Oh, I have to get there. You have that kind of car. I want to get there, and we end up becoming constantly in competition with each other. What's changed from the world that I grew up in? The most significant thing, and what drives me and my work, is the fact that we've assimilated a little too far. We have slid down that curve, Nico. And I had a friend that said this to me. They said, you know, by third generation, fourth generation, we've lost our language. We've lost a lot of our original stories of how we came, and we are here. We are now trying to get the Mercedes or the BMW. We want our kids to go to the finest school. We want to put on the best clothes and have their aropa. But what I try to bring people back to, when they come back to me, and unfortunately very late in life, saying, gee, I never asked my parents what they did. Well, let's look in the books. Let's look in our newspapers. And this is where the archives come in. There's so many of those regrets. I feel that the community today can't hope to understand the world that I grew up in unless I can describe it, unless I can provide evidence of it. And that evidence is going away. The Greeks that came, that stuck together because they had to, they don't feel they have to anymore. They're in competition. And my baklava is better than your baklava.
Yeah.
And that's why now the churches are all separate.
I see.
I don't know.
You ever thought to repatriate, to leave?
Yes, I was offered that as when I worked in Greece. They offered me expatriation, and it was my dream.
In 88?
In oh no, it was when I went back for work in 1998. So
1998.
there was a corporate career. I go into the corporate world in the mid 90s, the 80s to
with the phone company, right?
Phone company, different advances. I was in. I studied the old systems. I understand the technology very well, and I was in advanced technology systems. So I worked with the laboratories and the people who were doing the really advanced stuff, the stuff they haven't even implemented yet, Star Wars kind of stuff. But we also did a lot of very good things, and then at one point I had an opportunity to travel internationally. And it was my dream to work and live in Greece. And they gave me that opportunity, and they said, when I got a contract in Greece as a consultant, and I was living in Athens, right in Syntagma, and working in Marousi, and then later down off of Piraeus, but Marousi mostly. And I lived in Greece for a year. It was my dream. I was able to explore more deeply, not just my things, but actually to go and pick olives and to sit in a village and watch the water run down from the Xameni and come down and they included me in a census in one of the villages I used to stay in a lot, because I felt so much at home. Right now, if I could give all of this up, I would be in Greece. I would be in Greece. Not give up my work, if I could take my work with me, because I think we need to bridge this gap of history, this gap of who we are.
So, since you brought up the issue of work, let's talk more about that, because what you have here, it is something incredible.
Thank you.
You have to see it in order to believe it.
Yeah.
and I'm very glad that with our filmmaker today, Mr. Ioannis Koutalis, you have a chance to
very nice
document that.
Yeah,
because it's something unique.
Yeah.
And since we're going to see a lot of this, but also let's talk about it first, about the archives. I know you collect archives, you digitize a lot of material.
I can tell you how I got this started.
Yes.
And what it started was,
as you said, from a young age.
From a young age, I was recording, right? There might be a party going on, and I heard people, they used to have card games, they played President Cartel. Then those years, and it was really fun. I was a young person, and there was always one record player going, and all this music, right? And I remember recording conversations. And then as my older uncles and aunts that had tapes from the early years, I have tapes. I talk about my grandparents being on a farm. I have tapes of them singing on the farm. Songs, Greek songs that go way back. I'll play them for you. They will send chills up your spine, I think. They're beautiful songs. Folk songs and things like that. And I tried to find those. I brought those back to Greece. I brought a recorder to me, and I went to the villages, and I played from their villages the song they were singing. And then I started, and when I left the corporate world in 2004, 2006 is when I really left the corporate world. I thought, what can I do? I've now studied a lot of our Greek American culture. I could sell a lot of the things I've collected over the years, but I thought, well, I'm going to continue to study them. And then I decided, I traveled the country and I visited other institutions to see what they were doing. And I met with other people and I did my field work. I did these kind of interviews around whatever I was interested in. And a lot of times one conversation would lead to another, as you know. And then I came back and I ran out of money. And I decided I wanted to form this nonprofit. And I started to think, well, now what am I going to do? There's all this material that I've surveyed across the country. I know that we do not have our newspapers, our historical primary documents of our civilization here, of our history. It's not been written, let's be honest. The newspapers are disappearing. They're literally disappearing. They're not in the libraries. People have not been studying them. There's newspapers from the West Coast that have been published for almost 85 years that never made it over here on microfilm. Why? Because no one wants to look at microfilm. They want to do a Google search and have AI. Right now, our biggest thing is if someone does a search on Greek American history, they're lost. They're getting bad information because we've not digitized, we've not processed, we've not thought. The scholars have not taught. And we have all these material that's lacking. So I set up a nonprofit. I decided what I'm going to do is not try to profit off this material. Because at the time there were people here and in Greece that were taking historical recordings and they were releasing CDs in those years that were albums or tapes. Or they were taking publications and they were putting them out and reissuing them and not saying who the credit was. And I'm like, we're losing our history. Why are you trying to get money out of it? I stopped that. I'm not looking for that. And then I went to the libraries and I find that our newspapers weren't being saved.
The American libraries.
American libraries. In Greece, they were further ahead because a lot of the publishers here sent their publications back to Greece. The National Library of Greece, I've done research and I still do research there. I love it there. And I love the libraries. I just think that what happened was when I was growing up, there was such a focus on ancient Greece. That was our identity. When I went to school, they wanted to teach ancient Greek. Okay, I studied ancient Greek in college. Very different than modern Greek. But it helps me all of this stuff helps me personally to interpret things. But now here in America, the Greeks have over 140 years of accomplishments that have not been documented. And the fact that the libraries haven't done this. So I'm very passionate, as you can see. And I don't think it's a matter of...
So do you see that you have a lot of missing...
Yes, a lot of missing information. But not just me.
Missing records?
Yeah, missing... There are other people who have collections that are very specialized that they can't find a place for. And when I say that very carefully. And I'm not looking to offend anyone. I understand the systems very well. But in the college systems, in the academic systems, they have great libraries of unprocessed material. And they don't have relationships with the community. They don't have relationships with each other. They're not setting as a priority this material. And the Greeks here are not reaching out to support them. So if you have a project, you should be able to go to the Greek community and say, I am going to do this, and this is so important. These newspapers over 100 years old need to be saved. Can you help? Mr. Ahepa, Mr. this, Miss Daughters of Penelope. We need you to save your information. So I'm looking for an organization that has a different relationship.
Your thoughts about the financial, besides the ethical support that you have. Everybody loves you, and they invite you. You don't have a free day because everybody wants you to give talks.
Very high demand of it.
But what about support, financial support from?
It's been very difficult for me to get that from the community, and I think maybe some of this carries over from Greece. And I'm on conference calls with institutions in Greece, museums and libraries that are also at risk. I understand what their struggles are. I understand how the system works over there. I understand the government used to fund a lot of their operations, and the Greeks used to like to go and get in free. And that's the way it was. It was always like, Milas, we're going to get in free. You're going to see. And we would go to these sites, they say, Elinas, and they would tell me to just walk in. And one time one guy caught me, and he could tell, it's obviously, it comes across, I'm not right from Greece. But obviously I can say a few things, I can read, I'm very astute about it all. But they knew. And then I thought, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I the guy trying to jump over the line? So I ask all the Greeks here, and I'm calling out to them, and now in the time that I have left on this world, it's not about this collection that you're going to see in a very deep way, but what it reflects. It reflects, because I have other collections that are out there that are waiting to be rescued, we need a building. We need participation. We need these organizations with millions of dollars that sit back and do these galas every year and give out scholarships, which are nice. Write your history. Get involved. Give your stuff to Queen's College or to Greek Cultural Resources and institutions where they're going to be accessible. They're putting stuff behind walls. They're putting their money behind walls.
Yes.
I, as a scholar, independent scholar, have projects, significant projects, and I need material behind those walls. But because I'm not affiliated with these schools, I can't get to them. They have material. I can tell you about material that is deteriorating that they don't want to talk about. Why can't we work together? Why can't you let me process it? Take it back. You can have it. But my God, let's preserve it.
Yeah.
Why can't the American people here help me? Why is there more money in Europe and in Greece trying to preserve this stuff than here in America?
Yeah.
Why do Greeks from Greece understand this is valuable, and Greeks in America think about other things, like when they're going to take vacation and where they're going to go? And when they go to Greece, they want to sit in a cafeteria. And they want to do the opa and do the zembekiko in a nice club and get drunk with their friends. I love it. I've been there. And that's nice. It's celebrating who we are. It's the camaraderie. But our history, we have a dark period of our history. And there's so many levels, and we can talk about this, so many big things where we've lost our history.
Yeah, especially now that we have this dramatic demographic change. According to the U.S. Census, the American-born generations are numerically more than the immigrant generations.
Well, they are, because we don't declare. We don't. How do we count that?
Which is another issue. How we count.
You asked me a very important question. How do you identify yourself? We're asked that on every employment application. Everything that says, are you Chinese? Are you Spanish? Are you American Native Indian? No, but I'm Greek American. And you know something? There's a little bit of discrimination still. When I was growing up and I was getting into professional media, and I was doing radio stories, going to the radio stations, they said to me, why don't you change your name? Pouliopoulos. Do you know, what name is that? Mike Paul. You're Mike Paul. No. I'm Meleti Pouliopoulos. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly fighting against that, you know? And so, what do we do with that? I think that people are detached from it. I think they've slid a little too far down the curve. They're living off the fat of the land, and they've forgotten about the struggle that their parents came through, or their grandparents. What that means. They've forgotten about their history. They've forgotten about the lives these people led and worked so hard to build the institutions that these people stand on and say, we're proud to be Greeks, but we don't know why. then Sosameta. We haven't saved anything here by chance. We haven't written that history. And it's embarrassing for me to watch what goes on in the media when people say, why are you proud to be Greek? Well,
in your own experience, if you compare how things are regarding recording, preserving, and disseminating Greek American history and contributions, if you compare it with other ethnic groups, how you find it? Is similar? Is different?
I'll tell you the big comparison that I get was with Jewish people. In fact, I had someone send me a book recently. Well, I know the Jewish community. I lived in Jewish neighborhoods, and in New York and here in Boston, I lived in Jewish neighborhoods, and some of my closest friends are Jewish people. They're very close. They support each other. If you have an idea, and I've recorded histories, oral histories around this, of Jewish people talking about how they support each other. It was fascinating to me, because in Greeks, they would say, bravo, kala, bravo, and they would say, keep on going. And I'm like, wait a minute, but I need your help. You have an organization, you have all this money, you have all this history, you have all these people that can do something. No, we like our dances, we like to do our galas and have our bow ties. Okay, bravo for you. But how about, so the Jewish people help each other. They honor, there's museums. The Armenians, I have a big heart of it's funny because the reason I know these people, these different ethnic groups, because it touches upon my work, because I believe as an immigrant group, we have shared experiences, we have shared history with the Turks and the Armenians and the Jews in Asia Minor.
And a lot of traumas.
Right, and all the traumas. And so we have this, right? So they support that. My experience has been the support, because the engagement hasn't been forthcoming, because we're not teaching, because people don't know this is valuable, because the leaders of the community don't say it's valuable. People who are regarded as leaders, just because you have $10 million does not make you a leader in my book. Just because you're on the board of 5 or 6 organizations, and you're on the board of trustees and this, and you're getting all these awards because you give each other awards, doesn't mean anything to me if you're not listening. If you're closing your door to me and these ideas, and you're not looking at the historical record. You know something? They used to say to kids, if you burn your hand on the stove, what's the first lesson you learn as a boy or as a girl? You touch the stove and it's hot. Oh, no, you're not going to burn yourself. Okay, I get it. Well, this is the whole thing, right? If you look at history and you look at what we've done and we've learned, why are you forgetting that? Why all of a sudden do I get a press release and an announcement over here? Someone says, we've created a wheel. We've had a wheel for 2,000, 3,000 years. Where have you been? You have a wheel? Well, it's not like our wheel. Why do we have to be like that? Why is it now that the church in America, which you'll agree is that people find themselves in competition with each other? Ideologically, if you believe in Christianity, this is one church with many roofs. They don't see that. My church is better. My Judío is better than your Judío. This gets tied into the comic tradition here in America, because I think we make fun of ourselves and the way we are, but it's true. So when is this going to stop? When are we going to start supporting and realizing our values as Greek Americans? That our obligation back to the Patrida, but also to bridge this history, not to throw it away.
Do you think that the Greek state, the Greek Republic, should have a different approach to support?
I think I've asked this question. I asked this question of the Consul General from Boston, who had come visited here in recent times. He said, I want to help. How can you help? And I said, well, here's the people I want to talk with. Melina McCurry. Oh, no, she's not alive anymore. I know that. But I want someone with that kind of spirit. I'm going to tell you to take historical figures out. We did a bunch of these. And he says, I know what you're saying. What I'm saying is that I'm looking not only for the leadership here, but the leadership in Greece. And that leadership will come from the office of the cultural ministry office that Lynn McCurry held. They should be interested in the Greek diaspora, but also somehow there has to be someone telling someone that you need to support this. Somehow the leaders of the community need to be led. The scholars can write all the perfect position papers, all the perfect ideas, but they stay in their own world. And I love the scholarly work, but if that doesn't get applied, we're lost. If that doesn't get shared, we're lost. And we're teaching, by the way, the same stuff we were teaching, and not teaching the real valuable stuff. So, too much emphasis is going. The Greek government should speak up. The Greek government should say, your newspapers are very valuable, because you know something? It's not just the history of America, it's the history of Greece. It's the history of how the Greeks were, not just through the Balkan War and the Greek War relief, we can talk about the major moments, but all of that development.
But
why would you throw out
many Greek politicians come even up here, and they give promises. Do they keep them?
A lot of promises are broken all around on many levels. I think a lot of people's hearts are in the right places, but they get distracted. Sometimes they have their own interests, and that's the most bitter pill to take. Sometimes they come and they want what they want. So I think we have to remember to do a 360 and try to help each other all around. I think we have to have these forums and these discussions on a higher level. Why, if we can bring the leaders of the Greek government, let's say, and leaders within the Greek community here together around preservation, not preservation, but conservation. Our mind is we're going to be saving these things for the future, for our people. And you know something? If you can't do it, then let us know. Send your things to us. Oh, you have some people that were important? You wouldn't. There's so much material that's out there. I can't keep up with it. There are other newspapers that are at risk. There's things there's courses that need to be written for students. There's teachers that we need to teach the teachers. This is a big process. You know why? Because we are a couple of generations removed from the world that I grew up in. That world which had recent immigrants, but at the time it was ancient Greek studies. Now we're doing Greek studies. You're one of the leaders of that. Your school is doing programs, but that's not happening across it needs to be replicated. Clearly.
Recently, the Greek government tried to revive and bring an old story, and it happened partially. Besides some problems, it is in effect the right to vote from here, and the right to elect and be elected.
Yes.
So what do you think? Do you think Greek Americans?
I think it was too much of a license personally. I think there should have been some other clauses that said there was a little bit more of an involvement of what's going on in Greece. Are you a landowner? Have you visited? Have you spent time there recently? Do you understand the issues? I think for people because let's face it, in the diaspora overall, there's probably more Greeks in the diaspora than there are in Greece. But what right do I have as someone, by the way, I don't have my Greek citizenship, I'll tell you that story another time, but I'm working on it, it's in progress, but it shouldn't be.
It takes years, right?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be easy. It's not easy for the Greeks. It's not easy for the Greek young people, the young men that served in the military, for the people that got up there and worked in the land or worked in the government to try to work out their problems and understand the problems that are different there than they are here. And the needs are different, and we need to continue to work together. If you're not involved in that picture, don't vote. Don't vote. And you know what? It's just an awareness campaign. Don't think because you're going to vote and you're going to tell your friends, I voted. That's not what it's about. It's about really understanding. So how do we get people involved that's beyond their own vanity? In so many levels. What is that about? And I think the more that we continue to raise people's awareness, and like I say, I've been called out, I think, and I'm not embarrassed about this, of being very vocal about programs for young people that try to take them from ancient Greece, come to Greece and look at the Acropolis, to come and sit in a kafenio in Kolonaki. Those are all wonderful things. But what about everything that happened in between? What about what it's about? Rather than, look how great we are, look how cool we are. There's something more to that. And you know something? If you're not teaching in these leadership programs, 140 years of how your parents left this beautiful country and came here for something, and what that's about, and what values were instilled in you, what are the deeper questions, then you've missed the mark. And that's what we have to teach. We have to bridge, we have to stitch all of these years.
I mean, you touch so many areas and subjects, and it is wonderful. Thank you very much for having this round knowledge and wisdom. We'll talk about your different collections, and one of them I know is music.
The music was the beginning. It was because I was a musician. Well, very qualify that. I studied music when I was a boy. I realized I didn't have the talent that other people had, and that I did study and read music. And when I went to college, I missed music. I grew up in the home where people were singing all the time. We sang. I could play your recordings. My grandparents singing, and then we singing Greek songs and American songs, and songs that I didn't know there were American songs that were done in Greek. We were singing them in Greek, and it still goes on. And I was like, we had that context, and so I started with music. And when I went to college, when I went to college, CDs weren't even out then. It was after college that I started going to the record companies, and I went around and I said, boy, there are all these records that I grew up with, this beautiful music that's not available. And this is what I knew, right? So I started to collect, and I was interviewing and collecting, and people were giving me things. And then I started to wonder, what about this musician, Yoros Katsaros? Oh, look. Oh, there's this fellow, Steve Frangos, that had done these interviews. Oh, look, he used to write I remember Steve used to write for the paper. Then somehow, by chance, through the network, maybe the magic of the internet, I met Steve. And then I met Tina Bukovalis down in Florida. I was also interested in the Greeks of Florida. And these were people who were a little older than me, and they knew the system. They knew how to get grants. They knew how to do research. Steve taught me more about research than anyone ever since. And Tina about the grant world and about the Greek world. And together they were a great team. They'd worked together for years. They brought me in, and we did wonderful things. But that was a little beyond but what you asked. But I guess
no, it's fine.
It's just how the conversations go sometimes. There's so much that I want to tell you about.
Because it's good to mention also other researchers who spend a lot of their time and energy on Greek American things, and it's important to mention them. So
we do it out of love. I always had the philosophy in my head that said that the people that are doing good things, the people with the ideas don't have the money, and the people with the money don't have the ideas. But somehow this is going to come together. And if you're doing something good, right? And I'm sure people will say now, if they have a restaurant and they make a really good, caldo purico, it's like people are going to come. They're going to be like, the word's going to get around. So I'm doing all these good things. It's not happening in other libraries. So I started with music. And then I started to wonder, who are these musicians? And I started to find that other people had done research. They'd done interviews. They wrote articles. Oh, that's how that works. Wow, we never learned about that. Oh, these articles aren't available anymore because the newspapers are gone. Okay. I found Steve Frangos. And I went to libraries, the ones that would work with me as an independent younger person, the ones that would send me his interviews. Some were under special deposit arrangements that said you need to get a call Steve, and he's like, what are you doing? Still, I'll give you what you need. I'll give you my stuff anyway. But they taught me, and I started to realize that without the interviews that had be done before, and without the newspapers and the literature, the ephemera, everything that could document these circumstances, how can you ask a question, what was a Cafe Man like? How can you ask a question, what affected the Rebetico or Rebetica, the Rebetico song have in America? What are some of the social things that happened around that if you don't have this information? The question was, as a scholar, brought me beyond my local town. It brought me beyond this area of the country. It brought me to other areas of the country. And all of a sudden now I had material that was from California. And I went to my local libraries here and realized the major newspaper in California, it was called California, and then later Neo California, it never made it to the East Coast. So I thought, well, wait a minute. What about all of the scholars, all of the people that have come through, that have studied? No one has asked for this microfilm? And so one day I was on a trip. I traveled the country, and I was in Chicago, and there was this place called the Center for Research Libraries. And again, I grew up very sheltered. I'm very naive, and I think, boy, everything's open. And I called them up and I said, hello, I'm an independent scholar, and I'd like to look at these newspapers. And they said, we don't have a public office. And I said, oh, but you have a public site that says you have digitized these things from microfilms. Yes, we have. And I said, okay, great. Oh, what can I do? Well, we are affiliated with these schools. They gave me 3 schools. Are you affiliated? Are you emeritus, or are you a current student? Or I said, no, I'm just an independent scholar who wants to get to Greek American history. Sorry. And the schools didn't have these microfilms. They had not made copies. So easy to make a copy of things.
Yeah.
You want to take a copy of my Yaya and Papu? Boom, on a scanner. No problem. The fact that the academic community had left this stuff on the floor makes me wonder. I knew it. We haven't been teaching. We're just getting started. And that's okay. But let's remember that we have a lot of newspapers that we've lost. I personally got involved with one newspaper because, like you, I take notes.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, I'm looking for something now in the 1930s, and here's what I want to study. And now I have a couple of dates, and these are something must happen in the Greek community. You go to the newspapers. So I had a list, and I called a newspaper, a library here. I used to go down and do research, public library. I said, we don't have that newspaper anymore. Another library, we got rid of the newspapers. And this newspaper was the Hellenic Chronicle. And you know why it's so important? It ran for 50 years, but it has the memories and the stories of the first generation of Greeks. It has all those Greeks that came in my grandparents' generation, all of those institutions that were built, the history of the church, the history of the community, all of the organizations. You talk about, and the scholarly knowledge in this newspaper that was on a national level. They had this feeder network of reporters and photographs, and it was unbelievable in those years. That's one of the things we digitized here through my efforts, and people who I found that were like-minded in Boston. The publisher's daughter's still around. She wanted to do this for years. But there's so many other newspapers, so many others.
And magazines.
And magazines. You saw the magazine collection.
Yeah.
The fact that there are national newspapers that are over 100 years old, and magazines, scholarly journals that are not, and beautiful books of poetry and recordings that are not cataloged in any library in the country, makes me concerned. When I leave my house, you know what I get scared of when I go down the highway? I think, is the house going to burn down? Am I going to lose everything? This is a collection of collections. It's people have studied, and their research collections, their scholarly collections They're also just people who have just had it in their home and they're giving it to me. But 5 radio stations between here and New York, collections of radio station programs which are snapshots of history and other things going way back. The printed material, the audio sound, the film that we're going to see when we go back upstairs or downstairs, it's all over. This is our periusia. This is our klironomia. And this is what we should be saving. This is what everyone should get behind. And you know what, in Manchester, when I did this library project, when it got approved, everyone got into it. They funded it. They're continuing to fund it. There's volunteers that come forward. They've done more than I have done. They have done more than I've done. Oh. They are working harder than I'm working now for that library. And I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud because the community believes in it, and they're connecting their memories, and they're bringing in their things. Some of it's very interesting, not just to us, but to other communities. And you know something? When there's stuff there of the AHEPA or other organizations, we saw Eptachori upstairs and things like that, we are sharing it. And the scholars that come through there come through here, and now if I can send them to other institutions, I will. That little project, because when I architected that, one of the conditions was access. This is not just for us. This is not just the speaker series, the pictures, the literature, everything that's here. Our history is not just for us. But we have an obligation. You know, we say honor our father and mother. Here it is. Yeah. Here it is. Here are my grandparents that came here. And I know there are people that want to see their pictures and hear their recordings and hear their stories. And here it's not just my family. It just happens to be so many other families. And church history and organizational history. And I want to... Yeah,
communities.
It's so important.
Individual communities.
The leaders of the communities need to stand up and say, not that we're just proud to be Greeks or Greek Americans, but there needs to be an accounting. What are they doing for this historical picture? What can they do? What can I do? Well, if you call me to write your history from over 100 years, your membership of over 300 people, if there's no volunteers, then what you're doing isn't working. If they're standing on the legacy of these Greeks that came with that Greek spirit that we know and love, but we don't live it. We're standing on their shoulders and we're not saving their memories. Eoni Eimnini, that whole thing, it goes out the window because they're throwing out their stuff and they're spending the cash. I'm going to get a house in Florida and I'm going to put my picture on Facebook. No. Because in another 50 years, people are going to say, what happened? The newspapers are gone. Why don't the students, why don't the people know? Why haven't they been taught? What about your books? What about your language? Everything is gone. I'm going to show you poetry that's been written that's over 100 years old that was published. Beautiful things that are missing in the historical picture. We have so much money in this community. Why won't we spend some of it there? Why is it such a struggle? Why are we quick to do a Zembekiko and not read a poem? Why can't we listen to Kazanzaki, read Kazanzaki, and talk about that? Or Kafafis. I love that, right? But all of the people here that did all of their accomplishments have not been registered. We're part of the American fabric without having written that history. So when people say, what have the Greeks done here? Well, Plato, no, Aristotle, no. That was back pre-Christu. We're talking about what have you done here as Greek people? Can anyone bring the leaders here, bring them around the table, bring them on the film? What have we done? Don't tell me that Dr. Papp developed the Pasteur. Don't do your Google search and give me the stuff that's on Wikipedia. I'm not asking that. I'm asking you for accomplishments to the arts, to the sciences. I'm going to show you things upstairs that have been gone. Let's just bring them to life. Let's celebrate them. Let's have our Opa over that. Right? And so I think it's beautiful. I can't wait for people to see it. But without money and engagement, it's not going to come to you. you've got to get off your couch. And I'm saying that on all sincerity to people. They really have to get behind this. It's so important.
Yeah. So, when you look back, what advice will you give to new collectors and cultural?
Well, collectors, I think,
perseverance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here it is. Obviously, we always hope to teach by our example, and I'm hoping that when people, I traveled the country and I was in a lot of forums, little small meetings with people who had institutions that were very well funded, and we went around the room and said, "What are you doing? What are your plans?" And everyone, I was always the last person. I always waited until last. This happened a couple times, and I've recorded these sessions. You can listen to them if you'd like. And as soon as I came up with my ideas, and I said, well, I think what I would say is that what we need, now I'm just saying we don't need a building to operate the way that we're operating, because obviously that's not working within the system, that this is going to be an institution that has access, that's going to have a relationship with the community. It's going to have a relationship with other schools. It's going to be open. It's going to be a living, breathing archive, not another hole in the floor that we just got it and we're going to tell you we've got this and we're great. That's not what it's about. It's got to live. It's got to be developed. It's got to be studied. There are people that can tell me more about this. I love bringing scholars in. I love that you're here. You're going to walk through. You've already told me stuff as you walk through. You're going to continue to do that. You're going to pick up and you're going to say, you know something, this, and I'm going to learn. And maybe you're going to say, you know something, maybe some of this I need to have over at Queens because we're going to be doing this. And we can put stuff out on loan. And we've done it with other schools, and that's okay. But what I'm saying is that what I would say to other, if you're a collector, this is what's not recognized by the academic community. Now I'll have a sharing. Are we still recording?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have can you edit something later? This is something I want to tell you. I've gone to some very powerful people in the Greek community, people who have resources, not just financial resources, but they have the ability to bring in the people that we need to bring in to the picture. And they were critical of the independent scholars, critical of these collectors. I don't consider myself a collector because I've met collectors and I know some, and they're very eccentric, they're very hard to deal with, and good luck if you can get in. I'd like to introduce you to some, but it's going to take us a few years of me and you and them sort of talking before they'll let you in the door. I've traveled those routes. These collectors, some of them end up dying and their stuff ends up in the trash. The Provamidis department store in New York, one of the biggest department stores, and Paul Provamidis, who was the head of the AHEPA, the head of the Omospondia, he had so much history. No one went after his history. I had met them before his hand, and the family said, oh, we're not going to throw out everything. The stuff was being thrown out. I had people that were picking the trash, and I have recordings, and I have material that was picked from the trash. I've picked stuff from the trash. And you know something? Because we don't need you. We're going to do it ourselves, and they throw it all out. It's happened in my family. We have to right now, with the church and the organization and the community, get a big word out. And what's your role? AHEPA. What's your role? National organizations, we have very few, so I don't want to pick on the AHEPA, but I think that we all play a role here, and at least saying this is important. And yes, if you have millions of dollars in the bank, we could use some help. And yes, if we come to you with these projects, we can't get the answer. We don't have any money. Oh, our people, we have a chapter of 300 people, but no one's helping with the history project. No one wants to look at a picture, but yet at a starving little church, I can take a few pictures and have people go crazy over them. Why can't I simulate that excitement within the gala community that has their galas? And yes, they do some good things, but that's not how I would operate. So my coaching, to answer your question, to people who have archives is open your doors. Form relationships with the community. Form relationships with each other. Because the grant money is going away. We've seen with this administration here in America, in my world, it hits very hard. I get a lot of my funding from national grants and from state grants, that now that funding's dried up. The community hasn't been here. The larger organizations, Stavros Niarchos Foundation, other foundations, the Onassis Foundation, big foundations, what they want to see is sustainability. That sustainability comes through engagement. It comes from organizations signing up. Just like this is a war. This is a war.
Yeah.
This is, when there was a call for the Balkan Wars, the Greeks here said, we're going back.
It is this historical photograph on the boat.
Right.
We have the flag and even well dressed, three pieces suits, smiling, all ages, younger, older.
That's right.
Going to who does this, right?
Right. This is it. These are
But
these
the
are
importance
moments.
of archives, right? To have this picture.
I need other people to get fired up. I have talked to people that have incredible resources that could help. But ultimately, they have to get on this being about them. This is bigger than us. When I die, I don't want people to say, Meleti this, Meleti that, Meleti this. I want them to understand what this is about. I want them to implement some of the same practices. I'd like our communities to work together again. I'd like, if I can, get the schools to open up their archives to independent scholars and work with each other and not be in such competition. We have to rethink. As a Greek community, the first step is put our money up and our people up.
Yeah.